Not my problem. Morning. We're live.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. You are at the right place. This is Dr. Kiltz 5 a.m. meetup. He is uh, away enjoying his birthday week. But well, there's Luis Villalobos and Papa
Buenos dias.
Carnivore, Stephanie.
Good morning, IO Odyssey from Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And here's James. Morning.
Hey guys,
Hey.
my settings are being kind of funky here, so I'm sorry.
Aw, it's okay.
Trying to get this stuff set up for you.
That's okay.
Well, we already started, so you're live with us. Do you want me to take you off till you're ready?
No, we can roll. That's
Alia, are we giving out something today?
Yeah, I'll tell you. We are giving out something. Let's say, what are we giving away today? We are giving away a Kiltz cup.
Okay.
And the hashtag is going to be hashtag James.
So hashtag James, follow with your questions. And we'll be with him. Okay. I guess
you guys hear me okay?
We're good. Yeah.
My video's blurry. My computer's not connecting to my headset. I don't know what's going on, but
well, we hear you for sure. So, but if you want to turn face the camera, your camera's on this side. That'd be cool.
And the video, it could be the lens that's.
Yeah, I've never had this issue. This is the first time that it's done this.
All right.
Let me just get off of that and we'll go to the normal camera.
Okay.
So no fancy camera, no fancy mic. We'll just kind of roll with.
Okay.
Yeah,
that
totally
definitely
fine.
looks different.
Totally fine.
Yeah.
Cool.
So we are on YouTube and on Facebook.
Right.
We're not in a couple of other places. Normally we're on when Dr. Kiltz is here. And you never know, he might shut up at some moment, but probably not. He's on vacation, enjoying. I don't know if you noticed a couple of times he posted yesterday.
That's me. Oh.
Yesterday, some shorts about his birthday. You know, he's looking great for his age. And he was 69 yesterday. So
I think I told him,
Dr. Kiltz.
Yeah, happy birthday. Yes. I told him, but I hope I look like him when I grow up.
Yeah, I want to be like him when I grow up as well. So, James, thank you for being here. Even though we switch the host here on you. First question is, I always like to know how to pronounce people's names correctly, mainly because people pronounce my name incorrectly all the time. So how do you pronounce your last name?
LaParl. So if you said Carl, just put a P in the front.
Yeah, that's what I even said it out loud yesterday, trying to figure out. And it's LA, and the P is capitalized, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
LA right. Capital P. That's always been the battle for me.
At least your name's not Alia. That has 900 different variations, apparently. So what's your story, Morning Glory? How did you end up in this crazy carnivore world?
Man, so just like other guests, it started way back, and it wasn't like I knew where I was headed, right? It was little things here and there that just kept bubbling up that led me to going deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole. Growing up, ate a lot of processed foods, loved my Saturday morning cartoons, big bowl of cereal, right?
Yeah, totally.
Exactly. Lots of pop and candy and chips and that kind of thing. I had whole foods as well. It's just all those other things were just a part of my diet. Fast food. I remember after football practice going to McDonald's, eating like 2 double quarter pounders with cheese and a big old pop, that kind of thing, right? So that was my normal diet. Getting into adulthood, didn't focus so much on sleep, used a lot of caffeine to try to force my energy through with, college, work, that kind of thing. And then, let's see, what was the big one? I think the first real experimental thing happened when I leaned so heavily into the caffeine that I remember my teeth were just not feeling right. I was just drinking coffee all day long at the office. And there was a Friday. For whatever reason, I stopped drinking caffeine early afternoon. And because Saturday I got to sleep in, I had that big window and I had the withdrawals, right? And I just felt like garbage. So drank maybe a half a cup, called it quits. I was just fed up, right? And I didn't have caffeine, I want to say, for a year or two, right? So this is like the first big experimental dietary change for me. Ended up reintroducing caffeine, but down the road, I found the book called Grain Brain. You guys ever hear that one?
No, sounds interesting.
Dr. Perlmutter, I think, is the guy who wrote that one, right? So it's called Grain Brain. He talks about the effects of wheat and gluten.
I did read that book. I thought you said Brain. I read Grain Brain. Yes.
Yeah. So that one got me experimenting with the gluten-free diet, right? And cutting out grains. So that was probably the next big step for me. So I'm playing with that. Years go on. And then I decide that somehow I stumble on this fasting thing, right? So I decide I'm just going to wing it. And I end up fasting for 2 or 3 days straight, right? And so now I'm starting to experiment with this fasting of just maybe water, salt, and a little bit of coconut oil. That's
how difficult was it? I mean, you were eating gluten-free, not exactly, I imagine, not exactly low-carb, high-fat diet.
No, I just winged it.
How was your how was that fast? Do you remember if you had much difficulty on that second or third day?
I don't remember exactly how tough it was, but it wasn't nothing for me. It was a challenge. Like, it took some effort. I just happened to really want to do it. But that's what I remember is just water, salt, coconut oil if I was really doing it. And I think once I got into like the second or third day is when I started to experience that clarity that people talk about, which was kind of weird. And then so I think 2 or 3 days in, it wasn't so hard, but I decided to break it just because I was like, well, I did it, and this kind of sucks, so I'm going to break it. So I just ate a bunch of bacon. Later read that, you should probably ease into it a little bit more rather than just piling on a ton of food. But
you just dove in, huh?
That's it. So I'm a pretty terrible scientist. I will tinker with multiple variables at the same time and just go for it. Like, if I read something that seems like it resonates and it might work for me, I just try it. So there we are. So we got tinkering with caffeine, tinkering with wheat and gluten, that kind of stuff. Now I'm getting into the fasting. But then when I was doing the fasting, I don't remember if it was that first time or if it was a little bit later, I got what I think is known as the keto rash. So it was like hives all over my back, and nothing would reduce the itch, right? So I finally found this small canister of like brown greasy goo that smelled like a lawnmower engine, and that was the only thing that resolved the itch, right?
Wow.
So I took care of that, and that happened a couple times. Reintroducing carbohydrates took care of that. So I don't know what was going on, but through experimentation, I discovered that, right?
How long did it last, the rash?
I think until I started reintroducing carbs. Because the second time that I experienced, the first time I didn't know, it just was there, and I was freaking out, like, what's going on with my body? Second time, I thought once I reintroduced carbs, that it would go away, right? And so one of my theories is I was burning the fat. There were things potentially stored in the fat that were just being used and cleared out of my system or whatever. And that's what it was, a result of the fat cells releasing what had been there, because I was totally sugar burning up until then. I don't know. I didn't dig too deeply into this, but that's one of the theories.
Well,
that I
my keto rash lasted 3 to 4 months, and I've heard,
well,
some people on YouTube and went back to research a little bit, and most of the time it lasts just a few weeks, even when you don't reintroduce carbs. Many people do get rid of it by reintroducing carbs, but mine lasted 3 to 4 months, and I kept picking at it. It was this reddish, what we call macular papular. It was like little grains coming off. I could pick off. Like I said, lasted 3 to 4 months, and it was very itchy, and it was just in one spot in my belly.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
It lasted a long time. I could scrub it with. My wife has some scrubbing salts. I could scrub off some of it. All right, go ahead and continue, James.
Yeah. So I bump into the keto rash, up and down on low carb type of experiments. But then the real kicker that sent me into the carnivore world, that only happened probably in the past 6 months or so. And the reason was, at a high level, it was probably just a carb addiction, right, is what it was. But the one event that stands out in my mind is my mom made this, and I'm telling you, it was delicious. It was like a cream pie, orange creamsicle cream pie.
Amazing.
It wasn't round. She made it in like a square dish, but it was a cream pie, and it's got like the graham cracker crumb on the bottom, and it's just absolutely delicious, right? So I have one slice of that, then I have another slice, and it was game over, right? Next thing I know, I'm sitting on the floor like I'm 8 again, just in front of the pantry, eating every carby, sugary thing I can, and I just felt like complete junk later that day and into the next day. And
right back into it, huh?
Yeah, it was terrible. And so I lacked that self-control when, like, it's very easy for me to cross that line. And I just don't feel good. And then I read just the intro of Georgia Eads' book, Change Your Diet, Change Your Mind, I think is the title of it.
Yep.
It's a more recent book. Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And she talks about one of her patients who did this crazy thing where he was mostly eating like meat and cheese. And to me, it just sounded outrageous to not eat vegetables. I could not imagine being able to survive without eating vegetables. Somebody even mentioned carnivore to me a little while back, and it seemed impossible to me. But at that point, I was so desperate to not be feeling like garbage, eating all of the sugar and the carbs, that I went for it. And at this point, I don't think that I've ever had more stable and consistent mood and energy in my life. I think this is as stable as it's been. I don't have to. I can go hours and hours without eating, and there aren't energy dips. Like before, the energy dips were the swings were very, very big, right? They're minor now. They're minor, and I don't have the brain fog. I don't have the brain fog either. So there's now a distinction in my mind where it's like, I know what it's like to be tired, but I don't have that with the brain fog. So I can wake up with not enough sleep and realize that I'm tired. I want more sleep, but it's a different experience. I don't know if you guys experience it too, but it's like there's a distinction now.
I don't think it's a unique experience. Once you start talking with other people who are doing carnivore, that is exactly what happens. So you may be sleepy, but not falling asleep. Like you cannot, you know, uh, you just notice you probably should have gotten a few more hours, but you still got the energy to go and do whatever you need to do. It's
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah.
Yep.
I went through life feeling like I was hit by a truck when I woke up. Like headache, nauseated, zombie like. And then if you go on my channel, you'll see a video, a short on day 3, where I'm like, it's 5 a.m. I'm taking a walk. I have so much energy. Literally, day 3 days changed my life. I guess I'm lucky in that way. That's how like carnivore was so dramatic. And that's why I always say, like, people with Hashimoto's, like, go do carnivore. Your life will change in moments. Like from feeling the worst to feeling probably your best ever.
Yeah. I today is 623 days carnivore for me, and I had been doing keto, and for 6 months I was stricter, and then I started carnivore. I still 3 or 4 days later didn't eat for the whole day because I knew I mean, I just wasn't even close to being hungry, and naturally did my first fast just 3 days or 4 days after I started carnivore. So
Do you guys notice if you do a little bit of caloric restriction or an extended fast that you're a little sharper and you have there's like this weird balance of I'm kind of hungry, I want some food, but at the same time my energy is like really solid right now.
yeah, and it's not like if you do an extended fasting, even past 3, 4, 5 days, you will get, at some points you're gonna say, well, yeah, I could eat, I'm hungry, but you don't really feel like you are starving, and yeah, just not a problem. And then especially after the third day or during the third day and after, you get a little bit that euphoric sensation.
Yep.
So, what's the longest fast that you have done?
I think it's only been the 2 to 3 days, maybe 4. I
Okay.
haven't done the extended fast, and I don't do dry fasts. I've not experimented with that yet. I know some people will go um, a certain period of time without any water or anything. I haven't experimented with that yet, so I can't speak to that.
I've done it for one day. Like I think 32 hours was the and I had some water and continue fasting, but the dry part was just about 32 hours. Otherwise, my longest fast has been 5 days.
Nice. Just drinking water.
Yeah. And I did for several weeks. I saw in your notes one of the, I don't know if this was a family history, so you're going to tell me now.
Mhm.
You mentioned cancer, and a year and a half ago, I had a tumor removed from my bladder, and during my subsequent treatments, once a week for 6 weeks, I was fasting 2 days before and 2 days after my treatments, with following Dr. Seafried protocol and the press pulse uh, suggestions that he does, and a bunch of other stuff uh, that I did. I really think that helped me a lot. So year and a half later, all the tests have been so far negative.
This
That's
is
awesome.
wonderful.
Yeah, I think Dom D'Agostino is the one who introduced my thinking to the effectiveness of
Yeah.
a ketogenic diet on
I
cancer.
I met Dan Dominic. I met him about 10 years ago, and
Oh wow.
that's when I found out also about the Warburg effect and Dr. Seafried and the whole 9 yards. Uh, Before that, and I've been a doctor for a very long time, but it wasn't the metabolic theory of cancer. I didn't learn that until about 10 years ago.
Interesting. Yeah, it's I've been in this I've gone down the rabbit hole so deep that to me it's almost strange when people are surprised or not familiar with the potential of um, low carb, ketogenic diet, carnivore diet in terms of all kinds of things, chronic illness, mental illness. Um, there's a guy by the name of Chris Palmer, and I think the book that he wrote is Brain Energy. And
That is
in one of
correct.
his
I read
interviews,
his book.
yeah, in one of his interviews, I don't remember if it was in the book and the interview or just the interview, but he talks about a woman who, when she was like in her late teens, she was to the point where she was diagnosed, I think, as a schizophrenic, not self-sufficient. She had to have help for like 50 years, living just day to day.
That's crazy.
They get to a point where she's recommended to go to this study where they've got people doing a ketogenic diet, and they send her there to lose weight because she's just putting on too much weight. They don't know what else to do. Let's try the ketogenic diet, right? Within like a couple of weeks, I think it was, she notices that the voices are getting quieter. And I think it was within like a year that she no longer needed people to help her live. She was like self-sufficient on her own. Her mental illness of decades cleared up. So that to me was just one of the most profound stories and examples that I'm telling it right now. I just can't. That's like one of my favorite stories and examples to share with people.
It's amazing.
Yeah. And I imagine you have gone down the rabbit hole much more than other people, because one of the things that you must have been doing some research into low carb. And I don't know if you have any background, school or anything like that, but you tell me. You tell the audience what I'm talking about.
In terms of what I do for work with
Yeah.
copywriting, and yeah, so I've been copywriting for the past 5 years or so, and 5 or 6 years. And more recently, I've decided to start focusing in on, people who are in my world, right? I'm starting to blend what I do in my own life with my professional life. And so writing for low carb health coaches, I'm starting to dig deeper into that world and connect. And I think that's how we all found each other. And it just, if I thought that I was starting to get down the rabbit hole before, like once you really start looking, it's much deeper than I even realized.
Yeah. Sometimes we find difficulty sharing the message with our family and friends. Now, difficulty that in terms, once we realize this thing is helping me so much, you want to tell everybody, right?
Right.
And soon after you realize you're telling everybody, you also realize nobody wants to listen to you.
That's the biggest thing. Yeah.
So
We're all crazy.
How do you, and listen, I have a very good friend battling the big C right now. Year before, she had been diagnosed with a couple of things that are, definitely sugar related. And and this is someone I've known for almost 50 years. Also have family members with challenges, and just yesterday or the day before, someone who used to be a medical assistant texted me about something that also is going on, autoimmune, and I tell them, but I think they have most people have a hard time listening to that message. What do you think it is, James?
I think because it's so foreign from what we've heard and learned throughout all of our lives. I think that's what it was for me. I mean, like I had mentioned before, just the idea of being able to survive without eating vegetables to me was wild. Like, I wasn't sure what was going to happen if I stopped eating vegetables for a few days, right? I just, it just didn't, it didn't compute. You know what I mean? So I think that's a big part of it. And then, as you had mentioned, Dr. Nelson, you were mentioning you've been a doctor for how many years? And it wasn't until recently, well into your career, that you really started to understand all the stuff that you're talking about now, right? In terms of nutrition and diet.
I've been a physician for 40 years.
Yeah.
I've known about Atkins, and I read the books, and I've used that to yo-yo in the past 35 years, and even made recommendations to my patients. But it wasn't until June of 23 that I personally went carnivore and found this way of eating, which, because I was diabetic for a long time and still don't tolerate many carbs in my diet. So if I have to stay in my lane, whether I believe that, that is the best way of eating anyways, but even if I wanted to, I wouldn't be able to consume many carbohydrates like some influencers out there, even carnivore doctors. We won't mention names, but I don't tolerate them much. So I was aware of the low carb Atkins type of diet, but I still thought these people that ate only meat, and I've been aware of Joe Rogan and Jordan Peterson from a few years ago, a little bit before the pandemic, and I thought they were crazy.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So I think that's part of the challenge, right? It's what we've always heard, but then also the professional guidance that so we kind of, okay, I won't say we. I historically have outsourced my thinking to professionals, right? So I just fully trust without taking responsibility for doing a little bit of research, or at least a little more research, right? So when my medical professional says do X, Y, or Z, historically I had put a lot of weight into it. Not really, and it's almost unfair, right? I go ahead and I unconsciously, I'm not even realizing that I'm doing this. I'm putting all of the burden onto my doctor to know every single thing there is to know about the human body, nutrition, their own field, every other, not even taking into account that this is a human being, and they have done a ton of work, put a lot of time and effort into learning all of this stuff, but they don't know everything. And even within the medical field, people specialize. They focus more on one area than another. And from what I understand, nutrition doesn't take up a large percentage of that training program, especially not in terms of diets like low carb, ketogenic, carnivore diets. The benefits of being in a state of ketosis, those types of things, they're just not a huge emphasis, from what I understand, on traditional medical school training. So there's those two things. One, it's an unfair expectation that I had put on medical professionals, and it's also that just the flip side of that coin is I believed everything that I heard from that, and I didn't take it upon myself to ask questions. And I'm going to guess that I'm not the only person in the world who is like that. And so maybe that's a part of what plays into why
Oh
it's so.
no, definitely, definitely. And even before being carnivore, I do challenge my patients always. I Whatever advice I gave, I would say, and don't believe me, go and do some research, because I have found that the most informed patients are become very quickly, because many of the concepts in medicine are, you know, are not impossible to grasp, and maybe they'll become specialized in their own disease, sometimes more than what the doctors were trained on that particular disease. So I love it when people do research. Even it, I think my advantage is through experience. I can put things together a little bit better than many. Uh, but it's not that the knowledge is exclusive. And nowadays, you have a you know I don't remember the last time I stepped into a medical library anymore, or any library for that matter. You carry around in your phone such access that I didn't have at all. I would have to go to the library during medical school to open a book that it's already 10 years behind, okay, to try to do research on. So there was no the availability that most people have today. But you do expect to trust your professional. And so, do you think, if you ever got any wrong advice, do you think that your provider was lying to you? Or did he believe that advice, even though, now we know some of that advice may not be 100% correct, or didn't have any evidence, evidence-based based medicine? I've always liked to do my own research. There are many things we have advised patients for many years without a scientific basis, and just because whoever trained us told us that, and we believe also our teachers everything they tell us. So
Well, I mean, listen, you guys working in the medical field, there's a lot of risk there in terms of like liability for lawsuits and that sort of thing, as well as career wise. If you're not practicing independently, you're within a system, a hospital system, whatever it might be. I suspect that you're given this much room to play within, right? And so here's our general guidelines for how we treat or approach certain situations, symptoms, etc. And if you go outside of that, if you go off the reservation too far, your career is at risk, or potentially your license.
yeah, it could be,
Um,
certainly.
yeah, so I think I suspect there's a lot of pressure on medical professionals to have like this overwhelming amount of um, industry-wide accepted evidence and research before they can start to recommend something. Otherwise, because keep in mind that patients might not execute perfectly too, right? So there's like a ton of risk there. If they send somebody off to go and try something, they don't execute it perfectly, it's a little bit outside of the norm, what's going to happen? I think it's fair for them to be concerned that it'll just turn around back on them, even if it was sound advice. So I think they're limited in what they can recommend, but I also think they're limited in what they're allowed to explore and
Right.
learn and study.
So going back to cancer, you had mentioned something. Do you have any personal experience or family history of people dealing with cancer?
Family. Two family members passed from cancer. They were not necessarily caused by diet, right? So my grandfather mesothelioma. He worked on the freighters. I come from a family of people who work on the Great Lakes freighters. I'm just outside of Detroit, Michigan.
Oh, okay.
So the big giant ships that carry coal and iron ore and all that kind of stuff around the Great Lakes. That's, my family members. That's what we did, or what they did. Back in the day, asbestos was a really common thing there. They would just like dig their hands in it, and Grandpa got mesothelioma. He passed because of that. Earlier on in his life, he did have some skin cancer, though, as well. Another family member had cancer. I suspect, or I want to say that it was linked to Agent Orange or something like that back in Vietnam, right? So, hey, cool. Hey, Stephanie. So I've had some family members with cancer who have died from it and who have not died from it. We've also had one of my grandfathers died of a heart attack. And then I've had family members who later on in life experienced some cognitive decline, like to the extreme where I don't know if they actually called it Alzheimer's or dementia or whatever they called it, but just not aware of who they are or where they are, that kind of thing. And so a lot of this has played a significant role in me wanting to create lifestyle changes that at least shift the odds in my favor.
What health challenges have you improved with carnivore?
For me, it's really been about the energy management and the focus. The huge dips, the cravings, the crashes, the needing for naps, the inability to focus and be productive, mentally sharp. That's been my main thing. I know a lot of people are, maybe their driver is weight loss or diabetes, or they have a specific health issue like cancer, chronic disease, those types of things. But for me, it's been the energy management and the focus. I've just struggled with that for so long.
Good. Have you checked your cholesterol?
Yep. Yeah, they tested my cholesterol. It's shown to be high overall, but the more I dig into it, I've learned that there's a little more nuance to it than just a simple normal lipid panel that is run. And actually, you might know this from what I understand, the range that they used to kind of go off of was actually reduced. And so previously, like, my numbers would be totally in the safe zone, but
oh wow,
within the past like 30 years or so, I think they adjusted that window, and now I'm not.
When I graduated from medical school, a total cholesterol up to 300 was normal.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm hovering around.
Now the cutoff is 200, and ACL was still considered okay up to the last big change, which was many years ago, was LDL of 130 was probably okay. Even if it was a little bit higher, up to 160 under certain circumstances was okay. But now, like you said, there is more nuance to it, and triglycerides might be a lot more important, and ACL more important than the negative associations with the LDL cholesterol. So even with a simple cholesterol panel, I can see, like, most people with high triglycerides, they're just having chronic excessive carbohydrate consumption. And
okay,
even before I was pushing on my patients a lot the lower carbohydrate diet, I always knew that triglycerides, because they were eating too much sugar, basically. Yeah, that's what it translates into. So my advice about that has always been, number one, cut the carbs to lower their triglycerides, and the HDL usually moves the opposite direction. So Your triglycerides go down, your HDL goes up. HDL to me carries a heavier associated negative risk. In other words, the higher your HDL, the less chances you have uh, heart problems. And so by itself, the LDL risk is, if it's not causative, number one, and the associated risk is really very minimal. So I have stopped calling it bad and good, and our body makes all good things, I think.
What's the ratio? There's like a ratio you're supposed to do. I keep forgetting what it is, but mine's like 0.98 or something.
So if your triglycerides are lower than the HDL number, you're golden.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
That's simple.
But lab ranges basically will tell you that triglycerides under 150 are okay. I like them to be at least under 100, if not under 75. And then the HDL, which I never had, by the way, the HDL, I was always in my 20s and the 30s. Never in my life and I always had a little bit of higher triglycerides. Uh, 2018, multiple factors, like 7 different things kind of combined to give me a stroke. 6 years as now going on 7 years ago.
Wow.
And my LDL has always been a little bit high, but it's always been accompanied by high triglycerides and low HDL. So my last HDL was in the 40s, 49 actually, I think it was, and my triglycerides in the 60s. So you want the ratio of triglycerides to HDL to be at least under 2. But if it is under 1, I think you're golden. And you don't have to do the sophisticated lipoprotein fractionation. It's always nice to look at that, but you can just look at a couple of routine things and have an idea how, even if you're not pre-diabetic or diabetic, have an idea how insulin insensitive you are.
Yeah, and with the different fat molecules, isn't there something? Didn't I read something about one? There's a sort of a healing effect, and two, if you remove some of the inflammation, like part of why they're going to the arteries or the blood vessels is a sort of part of the healing process. And the reason they're collecting there is because there's damage, right? So if you remove the inflammation or the negative things going on, right, that kind of reduces some of the buildup. Am I getting down there in the right direction?
Yeah, well, you're on the right track, certainly. What happens with the cholesterol is the initiating insult to the inside of the arteries is inflammation. Basically, usually between high levels of glucose and high levels of insulin, causing inflammation inside the vessels. And all the inside of the arteries are covered with this thin glycocalyx. Is the first insult to that. The inflammation initiates sort of a clotting process. You start developing a clot, which is the initial response to any damage, to come and patch it up, right?
Okay.
And somewhere down the cascade of events, cholesterol comes, and you'll find some cholesterol. There's a book called The Clot Thickens, written by a physician, Malcolm Kendrick, and very, very interesting. And some of that cholesterol that's found actually may be not from the amount of cholesterol you have in your blood, but from red blood cells that also were drawn into that for clotting. Uh, but it is not as important as we've been making it to be the past 70 years. I think I'm absolutely convinced that it has to do more with the carbohydrates, the insulin levels, and causing the initiating event that unleashes a series of events that ends up with forming plaque.
Okay.
So I had one other question because you mentioned one of the things in your notes, seeking lifestyle changes before medications. Were you taking any medications?
Yeah, my some doctors had me on some statins,
Yeah.
and I had a period of time that was very, very stressful, and I got to a point where I was. This was just in the last 5 to 7 years, I'd say, and my blood pressure was way high. I'm normally on the lower end, and it jumped up like 20 points on the systolic. I was feeling a little bit lightheaded, like just under a lot of stress, and went in due to family history, like I'd mentioned, with heart and stuff like that, and then what they've identified as higher cholesterol. They put me on some statins just to play it safe. Got to a point where I was doing subsequent meetings with the doctors, and I said, "Hey, listen, here's my goal. I want to implement lifestyle changes that get me completely off meds." But then what the person did who I was talking to was actually increased my prescription a lot, not just a little. So that was, to me, that was, I wasn't being heard. I wasn't being, my goals and thoughts and considerations were not being included in that process, that decision-making process. So big time turn off for me. And then I started to get some pain, right? I was training for an endurance event, and with the upped statins, it was my legs or my knees or something, just a ton of pain came on. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to cut back down to my smaller dose and see if that gets rid of it. And it did. And then I finished out that prescription, and I said, I'm just going to test not refilling this thing. And that's what I've done. And I've kind of, maybe that was an important point of the story that I should have included earlier, but I've kind of leaned further into taking more responsibility for my health.
And were you ever given blood pressure medication?
No. Blood pressure hasn't been an issue. Once the stress went down, the blood pressure went back to normal.
Yeah. Do we have any questions, Alia?
I think we only had one, and we've kind of been handling them in the chat. Let's see here. We have two. How many carbs do you eat per day, Daniel? We were chatting with him. He eats some fruit.
For me, usually it's under 20 grams. Oftentimes under 10, and sometimes those carbs are. I'm using chronometer or chronometer. I don't know how to pronounce it. That's where I get my estimate, but some of those are even coming from like coffee, right? It
with your cream or something?
No, it says there's some carbs in my coffee.
There's no carbs in coffee, though.
Fiber or something it says in my coffee. Hey, listen, I'm just telling you what it says. So
okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes
I'm asking AI right now. How many carbs are in coffee?
No, most AI is gonna even tell you there's no carbs. But listen, we've always said there's no carb based on what others have told us. There's no carbs in no vitamin C in meat, for example. There is some vitamin C, small amounts, but there is vitamin C. And so, but if you think about this, it is a plant, right? Whether it's a bean, or a fruit. doesn't matter. It comes from a plant, and so maybe there is a very small amount, and people are able to round down to zero. So most coffee, when you look it up, it's gonna probably say zero
It
carbs.
says okay. It says point 0.1 grams per 8-ounce cup of coffee.
Yeah. So and then if you use heavy whipping cream, that also has very small amounts of carbs, but a few of them uh, add up.
It's
You have a
0
little.
calories in coffee. That's what it is. Coffee has 0
Well,
calories.
definitely 0 calories, basically, or nothing significant. It still comes from a plant. It's uh,
I have a question for
whipping
James,
juice.
actually. So I'm a ridiculous coffee drinker also. I'm a lot better now. And in an attempt to reduce Hashimoto's antibodies, which I don't think it did at all, I quit my pot to pot and a half of coffee a day in October last year. And in 36 hours for my last cup of coffee, I thought I was going to go through terrible withdrawal symptoms. I experienced like a complete calm come over me. Did you experience that when you quit coffee? Like that calm?
I don't remember experiencing that. I was still eating lots of carbs and everything still.
Okay. So maybe that's why it was maybe the carnivore plus the thing. I will say I had this really ugly, like it's called a milk spot or something here that I had for years. And my husband and I were going to various doctors and we're like, no, we're not paying money. It's just like a beauty. It's like it's just for beauty. I think it's ugly, but it's not like dangerous or harmful or going to kill me. So I was like, screw it. Carnivore did not get rid of it. Getting off of coffee in 2 weeks, it was gone. This
No way.
really ugly white spot. If you go back to early thumbnails, you'll see it on my eye. I drink coffee again. It hasn't come back, but maybe it was maybe it was like cortisol trying to go through my eye. I don't know. Have you ever heard of that, Dr. Nelson? Like a milk spot just going away?
From coffee? No.
I don't know. I don't know. I do drink coffee, but I'm not doing the pot and a half a day. Anyways,
Now, my skin tax have certainly reduced, and I also had xanthelasma, which basically is cholesterol skin changes that have also reduced. I knew a spot I had very pronounced a few years ago, and now I can barely find it. There was a question about ferritin there.
yeah. Oh yeah.
High,
Yeah.
high
Here we go.
ferritin can be inflammatory marker as well as a sign that you really have maybe you're accumulating a lot of iron. Usually, you want to make sure that it's not affecting your liver. And how high is high? I don't know what the number the person has. Steven Stone. Any thoughts on lowering high ferritin? But how high is high? Sometimes it's a matter of ranges, and they did these ranges on people who are not. Lisa says just stop coffee.
It's true.
Hi, Lisa.
She's right. She's right.
Close. I'm not there yet.
Just do it. Do it for 36 hours and see what happens. Maybe
But
you'll feel even more calm.
ultimately, on the ferritin
All right.
question, if you have to go to the doctor and make sure that there's nothing wrong with the liver, this is why Lisa is commenting as well, probably because she works a lot on the liver.
She's great.
You can always donate. Usually, if your ferritin and iron stores seem to be a little bit high, hemoglobin is a little bit high, not too dangerous levels, you can go donate. Save a life, okay? But most people don't really have any significant problems with ferritin, even if they think they do, because it's a little bit high. It has to be repeated, number one, because when you have inflammation, ferritin may go up, and it's not really measuring. There is a mechanism for it. It's not really measuring that you have overloaded your system with iron. It's a reaction to inflammation. And inflammation doesn't go away completely 100% of the time very quickly. It can linger. So I'm not saying that's the only cause, but most people who think they have a problem with ferritin is not really, it's just in the upper ranges, a little bit above, and that probably is okay.
Yeah, to build on that, Dr. Nelson, you said something there that was really important. I think you're like, hey, listen, everything's not going to, the inflammation isn't going to go away overnight. And while I and others have experienced very rapid benefits from cleaning up our diets, I do wonder, how long is it that we need to consistently do this to truly, or at least to get us really, really close to being fully recovered, so to speak.
How long do we have to do this? I've decided for me it's going to be the rest of my life. So
yeah, well, I mean, but at what point do you think? How long does it take the body to fully recover from years and years and years of just being over carbonated and insulated and insulinated, like too much carbs and insulin?
Carbonated.
That.
I thought you meant like carbonated water.
I think the recovery time is directly related to the dysfunction time, if you would. Like I spent 40 years being over 100 pounds more than I am now. I spent 28 years being diabetic. So it's going to take sometimes longer for someone who's been sick, much longer. I don't have any magic formulas because it's going to be different for different people. And with autoimmune diseases, it seems that really going carnivore helps.
Really?
Might not eliminate the autoimmune disease, but it seems most people do have a benefit in lowering titers, lowering inflammation. So once you get to a point where you're better, what's the alternative? Okay, so I didn't reverse it completely. I'm gonna go and eat my cereal and my donuts, and my, So the alternative, there's, to me, in my mind, there's no alternative if I'm paying attention to the benefits. Alrighty.
Oh my God, it's almost time. How'd that happen? It goes so fast. Okay, so we have 123 people watching. If you all in the next minute could do #James, then you'll get into the giveaway. And there you go. There you go. So James, you live in Detroit?
Yep, just outside of Detroit. Yep.
I was for many years of my life on the other side of the lake from you.
Another Midwesterner.
Yeah, I knew it.
Chicago, right?
I'm from Chicago, yeah, but I could hear it. I could hear it in your voice that you were from the Midwest.
Yeah. Yeah, I almost said pop earlier.
I love pop, soda pop. When I moved to New York at 16, I went to some store and I asked for pop. This is way before carnivore. They were like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "Pop." Soda pop. Who else is from the Midwest? Are you from Chicago? Do you know what pop is? Or yeah, not just Chicago. We're having an event next month. You should drive 11 hours to Yuma, Tennessee, and come hang with us if you want.
Oh, me?
Yeah, you.
If I could make it, I will be there. But I don't know if I'm going to be able to. I've got a dog that I'm still training, and he's not ready for being babysit yet. I just adopted him not too long ago.
Oh, so cute.
Yeah.
Okay, well, next time. We do have one question while people are putting #James into the chat. How to loosen and help bowels, please? Doing extra butter, etc. wasn't an issue for 6 months, but has been the last 6 months. Fennon Green. There you go.
James, do you have any problems with diarrhea, constipation?
Sometimes it's a little more loose, and I think it was actually on one of the recent morning 5 a.m. meetups where somebody was saying, "Hey, listen, the rendered fat, too much rendered fat can flow through you," and
Yeah.
so I tried that this week. I tried reducing the amount of tallow, rendered tallow that I include in my coffee and stuff, and that seems to have uh, helped. Actually, I had a lot of loose stool again earlier this week. It's not all the time, but occasionally I'll get that, and I think it's when I really up the tallow because I put butter and tallow in my coffee. That's my thing, and I think reducing the amount of rendered fat. I just got my. I don't always keep these by my desk. Just so you know what I'm talking about.
That's so funny.
I got my bucket of tallow that I keep on the counter, and I like to
Nice.
put a little too much. But yeah, so maybe if you want more, if you want it to flow a little bit more, what I personally would do is I would experiment with increasing the rendered tallow in my coffee. That is what I would do if I wanted to see if I could get a little more flow there.
Nice.
Yeah. Most of the time, when people complain about constipation, they're not complaining about hard, painful stools. Although this person asking the question, I think they made two comments, and one of the comments it included something about pain. So, but
Oh,
if,
okay.
if it's too hard, if it's too hard, increasing the fat. He also mentioned that because he's talking about his wife and they have increased the amount of butter. Uh, so yeah, you can try with a little bit more of the render fat and see if that helps. But most people they just are concerned because they haven't gone every day and now they're going every 3 days, and they're concerned about the transit, but not going frequently is not really constipation. Uh, Constipation really is when you're having a problem with going to the bathroom because of stool hardness or pain. You don't want to do that. And listen, if once in a while there's about 15 different type of laxatives in the pharmacy. I'm not opposed. I'm not a dogmatic about, oh, don't take any medications. Go and use the one that helps you better. And sometimes some people think the milder laxatives that you can find in the pharmacy are still effective. It's just they're not going to try work overnight. It may take a few days after you take them, but I'm not opposed to doing that. Uh, And if you're over 50, even though not everybody wants to believe that you should have a colonoscopy, I think you should screen for colon cancer. So, all right.
All right.
Oh,
So there we go. We'll end on that poopy note.
yeah.
No, there was one person I will just answer this question really quickly and then we got to go. Spy Mom, what are the best treatments for varicose veins? Asking for my mom. She's been eating mostly fat meat for the past few months, some homegrown apples from time to time. Varicose veins.
All right. Well, it depends on the severity of the varicose veins. Uh, Varicose veins is some damage to the veins and some ballooning, and some people have it more severe than others. The bottom line is they can improve, for example, on a very low carbohydrate diet, but you may need to support them using graduated compression support stockings. The If you're overweight, the weight loss and the diuretic effect, because low carbohydrate diets are diuretic, all those things help. But if you have very noticeable varicose veins, which they can improve, uh, but wearing compression stockings, doing rebounding, vibration plates, all those things may help with the appearance of them. But if they're very severe, sometimes you have some you need to have some interventions, and you can do ablations and surgery and all the other good straight medical stuff.
There you go. Here we go. Share screen. Who's gonna be the lucky winner today? Maybe it's James. Sharon M. Esterson, please email me. Congratulations, Alia at drkiltz.com. And you will get, what are we giving away? A Kiltz cup. Today,
All right. And if someone's here and is not a member of the Kiltz Mighty Tribe, remember to go to drkiltz.com, sign up for membership. It is absolutely completely free. And
a lot of good people hanging out, answering questions.
And there's a lot of good information on the website. There's a carnivore course. Just go
and there's a lot more going to be happening very soon. By June 1st, a lot more is going to be happening.
And you can join the calls there directly within the app.
I didn't know that. I always do a desktop. There you go.
Zoom calls.
I usually go YouTube, but I did test.
Okay. Yeah. Nice.
Zoom calls every Monday at 5:30. So,
and we have a guest, or we have just a bunch of great people hanging out. There you go.
Do we have anyone on?
We do. Let's see. Who's Monday?
For next Monday?
Coach, what's next Monday? Nope, we don't. Not yet. Not yet. They had to cancel. We had somebody. They had to cancel. A family thing came up. But we will have somebody. All right. Well, thank you so much, James, for waking up so early and hanging out with us.
Thank you, guys. Yeah. Thanks for being here every day.
Have a good day, everyone.
Yeah. Okay. As Lewis says, adios. Goodbye.